Look around you. Something has shifted in the last week, and not everyone is seeing it yet. But the people who are paying attention can feel it in the texture of their daily interactions, in the quality of the decisions arriving at their door, in the way situations that were frozen are now showing signs of movement. The change didn't happen dramatically. It didn't announce itself. It arrived the way real change usually arrives, through the gradual accumulation of small differences that only become visible when you stop moving long enough to compare where you are now with where you were 7 days ago. 7 days ago, you were inside the final compression of Mercury retrograde, inside the Pisces balsamic energy, inside the particular quality of stuckness and depth and interior pressure that characterized the weeks before the major shifts arrived. 7 days ago, the conversation that needed to happen hadn't happened yet. The decision that needed to be made was still suspended in the fog of the retrograde. The direction that needed clarifying was still obscured. 7 days ago, forward motion in certain areas of your life felt like pressing against something that wouldn't yield. And now, 7 days later, something is different. The something is not dramatic. The something is not the kind of change that makes it into the story you tell about your life as a pivotal moment. It is quieter than that, and therefore more real, because the changes that actually determine the trajectory of a period are almost never the dramatic ones. They are the quiet shifts in how situations feel, in how people around you are responding, in what is suddenly available that wasn't available before, in what is moving that wasn't moving. March 26th is the day when those quiet shifts become undeniable, when the change that has been accumulating since March 19th and 20th reaches a point of visibility that even the people who haven't been paying close attention begin to feel. And the question living inside today, the one that will quietly separate the people who use this moment from the people who miss it, is whether you are one of the ones noticing. The Pisces new moon that arrived on March 19th is still the operating foundation of the current cycle. 7 days in, the reset it initiated is still very much alive, not in the intense, immediate form of the first days, but in the deeper form of a foundation that has been set and is now being built upon. Something was laid down in those first days. Something about the emotional starting point of this cycle, about the quality of honesty and depth that the Pisces energy was asking for at the beginning, about the particular kind of fresh start that a new moon in the deepest emotional sign of the zodiac initiates. That foundation is present beneath everything being built in the days since. What this means in practical terms is that the changes appearing today are not random. They are the specific expression of the foundation laid in the opening days. The conversations that are moving forward are doing so in the direction that the honest intention of the cycle's beginning was pointing. The decisions that are clarifying in the direction that the genuine self-knowledge of the retrograde period produced. The opportunities are appearing in the areas where the Pisces new moon's deep reset created space for something genuinely new to arrive. And the situations that are still stuck, that are still producing the familiar friction of an unresolved dynamic, those are stuck precisely because the foundation the new moon was trying to lay in those areas was not fully accepted. Because the honest reset the Pisces energy was offering was not fully received. Because something in those specific situations traveled into the new cycle in its old unexamined form, rather than in the new, clearer, more honest form the reset was making available. This is the specific insight available on March 26th, 1 week into the new cycle. You can now see, with the clarity of 7 days of early evidence, which areas of your life accepted the reset and are responding to the new conditions, and which areas are still operating from the old pattern. And that visibility, that specific, concrete, evidence-based understanding of where the genuine new beginning took hold and where the old cycle is still running, is one of the most practically useful pieces of information available to you at any point in the cycle's arc. Here is what the shift looks like in the specific textures of daily life on March 26th, for the people who have been paying close attention and can see it clearly. The communication dynamic that was stuck during the retrograde, the exchange where messages seemed to get lost in translation, where the other person's responses felt slightly out of sync with what you were actually saying, has a different quality now. Mercury direct means the channel is clear. What you send lands more accurately. What you receive is less obscured by the static that retrograde energy puts on communication. And the conversation that was circling during the retrograde, approaching the real subject and then retreating before quite reaching it, has, in the past week, if you let it, found its way to something more direct and more real. You may have noticed that the other person is responding differently, that the exchange is reaching a place that the retrograde was preventing it from reaching, that something in the dynamic has softened or clarified or shifted enough that a genuine exchange is now possible where a functional exchange was all that was available before. The decision landscape has changed too. The decisions that were surrounded by fog during the retrograde, the ones where every consideration seemed to produce more considerations rather than a clear direction, have been, in the past week, showing their answers. Not through dramatic revelation, but through the quiet accumulation of evidence that the fog was preventing. Small confirmations that one direction is right. Small indicators that another direction would be a mistake. The decision that felt impossible a week ago has become, in the days since Mercury station direct, something you could actually make. And if you've made it, the early consequences of it are arriving now and beginning to confirm the direction. If you haven't made it, the pressure to make it is likely increasing as the evidence accumulates and the fog continues to clear. The opportunity landscape has also shifted. The retrograde had a way of making opportunities feel untimely, arriving at moments when the conditions weren't aligned for receiving them, when the energy was moving backward and the forward motion required to act on them wasn't available. In the past week, those opportunities have either resurfaced in a form that makes more sense to move on, or new opportunities have appeared that belong specifically to the new cycle rather than to the one that just ended. The characteristic of the opportunities arriving right now is that they are actionable in a way that retrograde period opportunities often aren't. The conditions are aligned for them. The forward current is running. And the question is whether you recognize them as the specific kind of opportunity that arrives in the aftermath of a major reset. Quieter than expected, less dressed in drama than anticipated, but carrying more actual potential than opportunities encountered in ordinary time. There is a gap that is widening right now between two groups of people, and the gap is specifically about awareness. The people who used the retrograde period as it was designed to be used, who did the honest interior work, who sat with the returning situations and the surface truths and the patterns that the backward energy was making visible. Those people are experiencing the past week as confirmation, as the early returns of the work done, as evidence that something real shifted when the major events of March 19th and 20th arrived. For them, the changes are visible and feel earned. The movement in their lives has the quality of something long prepared for, finally arriving. And the people who endured the retrograde without engaging with what it was surfacing, who managed the discomfort of the period without using it, those people are experiencing the past week as disorienting in a different way. The momentum has returned, but it doesn't quite feel like their momentum. The new year has begun, but it doesn't quite feel new. The conversations are moving, the decisions are clarifying, the opportunities are appearing, but in forms that feel slightly unfamiliar, slightly not what was expected, slightly out of sync with where they thought they were when the new cycle began. This disorientation is information too. It is the feedback of a new cycle telling someone who didn't engage with the reset that the new conditions are based on a reset that didn't fully take. And it is early enough, March 26th, 1 week in, that the response to this disorientation can still be productive rather than just reactive. The productive response is to stop and ask honestly, what did the retrograde period try to surface that I didn't fully engage with? What returned to my awareness that I let pass without the honest attention it was asking for? What truth about my patterns or my direction or my relationships was available during that period that I allowed to be covered back over by the momentum of the new year arriving. Because those things are still there. They traveled into the new cycle, as they always do when they're not genuinely addressed in the same unresolved form. And the disorientation of the first week is their early signal, arriving in the feedback of the new cycle's opening days, before the pattern has too long to establish itself, while the honest engagement with what the retrograde surfaced is still possible to initiate even now, 7 days in. The twist in this story, the thing that makes March 26th more than just a day of noticing that changes have occurred, is that the awareness available today is a specific kind of advantage. Awareness, genuine honest awareness of what is actually happening in your life as distinct from what you've decided or hoped is happening, is among the rarest and most practically valuable resources a person can have at the beginning of a new cycle. Most people are not operating with accurate awareness of what the first week of their new cycle has actually produced. They are operating with a version of events that has been shaped by their hopes for the cycle, their fear of repeating past patterns, their investment in the narrative they've constructed about what the reset was supposed to change and what the new year is supposed to be. That version of events is not without value. The hope and the intention are real and they matter. But they are not the same as the clear-eyed honest seeing of what has actually happened in the first 7 days. The awareness available today, for the person willing to bring honest attention to the evidence of the first week, is the kind that converts hope into direction. That takes the intention set at the new moon and measures it against the early reality, not to judge the intention, but to calibrate the path toward it. That looks at the feedback of the first days, what moved and what didn't, what responded to the new conditions, and what is still running on the old pattern, and uses that information to make the second week more effective than the first. This is the practical advantage of today. The first week has created evidence. The evidence is honest. And the person who is willing to see it honestly, rather than through the filter of what they hoped the first week would produce, is the person who arrives at the second week with an accurate map rather than a hopeful one. Accurate maps are how you navigate cycles. Hopeful ones are how you get lost inside them while believing you're on track. The specific action available today, the one that uses March 26th's particular quality of accumulated evidence and clear-eyed visibility, is the honest assessment of the first week. Not a lengthy formal review. A brief, honest, specific accounting of what has actually happened since March 19th. What situations have shifted in the past 7 days? Where is there movement that wasn't there before the major events of last week? Which relationships feel different, closer, more honest, more generative than they did during the retrograde? Which feel the same, or feel like they've begun a pattern you recognize from previous cycles? What decisions have been made, and what early consequences are they already producing? What opportunities have appeared, and how have you responded to them? And, this is the one most worth sitting with, what has the first week been trying to tell you that you haven't fully stopped to hear? That last question is the one that distinguishes the inventory from simple review. Because the first week of a new cycle communicates continuously, in the language of ordinary events and responses and feelings and encounters. And most of what it communicates gets sorted into the ongoing stream of daily experience without being recognized as the specific feedback of the new cycle's beginning. The sense of slight wrongness that arrived in the second day after a particular decision, that was feedback. The unexpected warmth of a response you didn't anticipate, that was feedback. The familiar friction showing up in a new context, that was feedback. The moment of unexpected clarity in the middle of an ordinary task, feedback. What has the first week been telling you? And what does that telling suggest about what the second week needs from you that it hasn't yet received? 7 days have passed since the Pisces new moon reset the cycle. 7 days since Mercury stationed direct, and the equinox turned the seasonal balance, and the sun entered Aries, and the new year began. The early growth is visible. The first consequences are in. The trajectory established by the first week's choices is legible. For the person willing to look at it honestly, in the evidence of how those choices have landed and what they have begun to produce. March 26th is the day when that first week's evidence becomes fully available for honest seeing. When there is enough of it to see clearly, and it is still recent enough to respond to with meaningful course correction if correction is needed. When the awareness gained from looking honestly at what the first 7 days have actually been, rather than what you hoped they would be, is still the kind of awareness that has the power to shape what the next 7 days become. The people who notice the changes happening right now, who see them honestly, assess them accurately, and respond to them with the specific, calibrated action that honest seeing makes possible, those people will experience the second week of this new cycle as a genuine continuation and deepening of what the first week began. A cycle that is building rather than stalling. A direction that is confirming rather than confusing. A new beginning that is earning its name rather than simply borrowing the title from the date on which it started. The awareness available today is the bridge to that second week. And the changes that have already started happening in your life, the quiet, undramatic, real shifts in how situations are moving and how people are responding, and what is becoming possible that wasn't possible before. Those changes deserve your honest, attentive, clear-eyed recognition. Look at them, see them for what they are, and let what you see become the foundation of what you do next. The first week is complete. The second week is beginning. And what connects them, what makes the second the genuine continuation of the first rather than a separate attempt at the same thing, is the quality of awareness you bring to the bridge between them. Today is that bridge. The changes are already here. The only question is whether you see them clearly enough to build on them.